Is there anything else to say? Diatoms are phytoplankton, or algae, that live within cell walls made of intricately ornamented glass. They remove CO2 from the air and produce 50% of the oxygen we breathe. They produce energy-rich fatty acids that are food for the entire food web. Estimates of the number of diatom species range from 20,000 to 2 million. Diatom species have distinct ranges of pH and salinity where they will grow. Climate change affects them in complex ways.
Insects are very important for pollinating the large majority of plant species and keeping soil healthy. 80% of the biomass of insects has disappeared in the last 25 to 30 years. This is a big concern. Industrial-scale intensive agriculture is killing their ecosystems in the West, and in the tropics it is more climate change. Higher levels of carbon dioxide appear to stimulate plant growth, but this vegetation lacks vital nutrients, causing a decline in insect populations, even in regions where insecticide use and habitat loss are not prevalent.
Scientists are finding that the increasing levels of carbon dioxide are making staple crops less nutritious, leading to health problems.
Every third spoonful of the world's food depends on pollination, and here bees are invaluable. Yet bee populations are suffering immensely due to pesticide use, decline in wildflower populations, and primarily due to climate change. Starving bees have been found to nibble just a little the leaves of flowerless plants to coax them to flower up to a month early, when pollen, their sole source of protein, is in short supply. In doing so, they may be injecting chemicals into the plants to promote flowering. Bees are known to be very industrious. They are even known to recognize human faces as long as they were tricked into thinking that they were oddly shaped flowers. In an ancient lake bed in Chad, Africa, airflow and topography combine in just the right way to cause 182 million tons of dust to lift off and travel across the Atlantic, depositing about 28 million tons of it over the Amazon River basin, helping replenish it with precisely the level of nutrients such as phosphorus that it loses each year as rain and floods wash these away from its soil. A NASA-based study confirmed in 2015 that essential fertilizers were thus naturally transported from an arid region where rock minerals composed of dead microorganisms are loaded with phosphorus to one of the most fertile spots on Earth, which nevertheless is in need of these very nutrients to flourish.
Marine life, including corals, are found to actually build tolerance to heat and increasing levels of UV, provided that the environmental changes happen slowly. And I want to talk to you a bit about the amazing environments that will be affected by climate change. First, cloud forest is a form of rainforest that grows above 2,000 meters above sea level in tropical mountains. Winds full of moisture from the sea are forced upwards when they hit a mountain. It cools as it gets higher up, forming clouds, and it makes the rainforest dripping wet all the time. So it makes sense that the ecosystem that has developed there needs the moisture. Species from lowland areas are moving upwards because their land is becoming too dry. Predators from the base of the mountain are now climbing up for more hospitable conditions, feeding on the animals in the cloud forest and reducing the amount of food for the predators who are native to the cloud forest. Hurricanes caused by climate change are also damaging the environment. El Nino, a naturally occurring thing, it happens every 3 to 5 years, warms up the area and makes it drier. The ecosystem can just about survive, but now climate change may make this event even more severe and more often, causing many more species to die. 9 out of 10 plants are weak to the increasing El Nino. As well as the cloud forest ecosystem dying, animals in polar regions are also struggling. Antarctica's sea ice is decreasing. Sea ice algae is also decreasing. Sea ice is a major food source for krill, and krill is many animals' staple diet. Ice reducing affects the entire ecosystem. In the Arctic, other animals hunting is being affected by the melting ice. Polar bears need sea ice to help them hunt seals. As polar bears are forced inland to find different food sources, they are more likely to come into contact with humans who live there, who hunt polar bears for their meat and warm skin. For a degree increase at the equator, there is a 5-degree increase at the poles. Marine ecosystems too are being affected, but corals are the ones being hit the hardest. After sea temperatures rose to the highest ever recorded levels in 1998, in some areas up to 90% of corals were bleached. After being bleached, the corals will probably die. Bleaching happens when the corals are unhappy. They expel tiny algae living in their tissues. Without the colored algae, the corals appear white. Corals are also being threatened by other human causes. Humans are definitely the main reason for climate change. Or otherwise, can you explain this graph? Don't mess with the amount of greenhouse gases. Otherwise, it won't be good. You might be wondering why we are doing this to our environment. Because we seem to care about money and lifestyle, but we aren't aware of the consequences for our planet and future generations. Sacrificing the planet for money isn't a decision that is ours to make.
So then,
here are some of the impacts of global warming that we have already talked about.